On this Friday night, September scorcher. The high-pressure system.
It's like a bully. You can't kick it out.
Punishing Western Canada and the U.S. The Conservative leadership race nears the finish line. What to expect, and one candidate's pledge about plain language. Plus, Stream Dream. How Amazon is banking on hobbits and hemlocks to beef up its bottom line. And the Summit Series.
Became more than just one hockey team trying to beat the other.
How the historic tournament changed hockey forever.
Global National with Farah Nasser.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Well, it's upon us, the Friday before the last long weekend of the summer. And get ready for a scorcher. A U.S. heat dome broiling California is going to have an impact on Canada's Labor Day weekend. Tonight, more than 23 million across the U.S. and parts of Canada are under heat warnings. And as Heather Yourex-West explains tonight in our top story, in some areas like BC and the Prairies, it won't just be hot, it could be dangerous.
In Death Valley, California, record-breaking heat. 53 degrees Celsius, the hottest day ever on record for September.
It is actually dangerous, and it would be dangerous to break down here.
Yeah, it would be.
I'm extremely hot right now just standing here. I don't know how you guys are doing it.
The punishing heat settling over most of the western United States, fueling a devastating fire north of Los Angeles. The route fire has already consumed more than 2,000 square hectares, injuring at least 7 firefighters who tried to hold it back. A lengthy heat wave is now putting so much pressure on California's electricity grid, officials warn rolling blackouts may begin in the days ahead. A dangerous situation created by a heat dome.
It's a large area of high pressure area that sits over a large piece of real estate and doesn't move. It's like a bully. You can't kick it out.
And its influence stretching up into parts of Canada. Sections of southern Alberta and southern Saskatchewan could see temperatures on Saturday into the mid to high 30s, smashing previous records.
Heat warnings are already in effect in many parts of BC and Alberta heading into the long weekend. Officials warning that spending too much time outside can be dangerous, especially for the elderly, children, and pets. Once relatively rare, intense and long-lasting heat domes are becoming more common in many parts of the world.
So far, we've seen a number of these events. In Pakistan had one in the spring as well, a really intense heat wave. So I think we're seeing the impact of climate change. And you're quite right that if we don't change our carbon footprint, these events are going to become more extreme.
The short-term good news is that across Western Canada, temperatures should begin to cool by the start of next week. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
7 people have been injured in an explosion at a refinery in Come-by-Chance, Newfoundland and Labrador. Now, we don't know many details at this time, but police say one person's injuries are serious and that the incident happened just after 4 p.m. 2 hours later, Brea Renewable Fuels said the incident had been contained. Russia will not restart the flow of natural gas to Germany. It's blaming an oil leak at a pumping station as the reason. All this as concern continues around the Zaporizhzhia Nuclear power plant. 6 inspectors are at the site now, and there were concerns by Ukraine that they were not given full access to the site. But as Redmond Shannon reports, the head of the mission says that's not the case.
International nuclear inspectors walking past Russian military vehicles inside Zaporizhzhia Nuclear power plant. New footage released Friday of Thursday's long-awaited inspection mission. A Russian official shows the International Atomic Energy Agency team the damage on site, but all of this video comes from Russian broadcasters. Speaking to Western media back in Vienna, IAEA boss Rafael Grossi says the damage remains a top concern.
Impact, holes, markings on buildings of shelling.
His worry is that the power supply needed to cool the plant could be interrupted again. He dismissed concerns raised by Ukraine that his team was not given full access.
We've seen what I requested to see. Everything I requested to see.
Grossi says 6 inspectors are still at the facility and 2 will remain indefinitely. His responsibility to keep them safe may mean he holds back on criticizing Russia. Grossi says their presence is invaluable as Russia and Ukraine continue to blame each other for the ongoing shelling in the area.
It is no longer a matter of A said this and B said the contrary. Now the IAEA is there.
Ukraine's nuclear energy company says one reactor is now back online after Russian shelling disrupted supply Thursday. But energy supply concerns aren't confined to Ukraine. Russian energy giant Gazprom says an oil leak at a compressor station means the supply of natural gas to Germany will not resume Saturday as scheduled. The company blamed Western sanctions for the maintenance hold-up, giving no date for a resumption of supply, just as summer ends and as natural gas prices are at record highs. If they stay that way for winter, Europe's resolve in supporting Ukraine will be severely tested. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Political giant Mikhail Gorbachev will be laid to rest tomorrow, but he will not be given a state funeral. And Russian President Vladimir Putin, who paid his respects to Gorbachev on Thursday, will not attend the funeral. The snub shows the Kremlin's ambivalence to credit Gorbachev for his role in ending the Cold War. Putin blames Gorbachev for not blocking NATO's expansion eastward. It's a point of contention that played a major role in Russia's current invasion of Ukraine. U.S. President Joe Biden took explicit aim at his predecessor in a rare primetime address last night. In the speech, Biden said Donald Trump and the extreme ideology of the MAGA Republicans threatens the very foundation of our republic.
There's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country.
Biden spoke from the city known as the birthplace of American democracy, Philadelphia. He says Americans are facing a choice between democracy and Donald Trump. Neetu Garcha reports.
I ran for president because I believe we're in a battle for the soul of this nation. I still believe that to be true.
A few minutes into Thursday night's rare primetime address, the president directly named Donald Trump, completely deviating from past avoidance of saying his name.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
Biden emphasizing not all Republicans are to blame, but saying those who support Trump are embracing anger and chaos.
MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. They do not recognize the will of the people. They refuse to accept the results of a free election.
The White House insisting this speech wasn't political when it had all the hallmarks of just that, says political analyst Dan Casino.
He's saying this is an unprecedented threat to democracy. These are by far the strongest words we've heard out of President Biden. He's saying there's no negotiating with these people. He's done trying to build consensus, and he calls on voters to reject them completely in the November elections.
Meanwhile, GOP leaders are accusing Democrats and Biden of being divisive.
Joe Biden and the radical left in Washington are dismantling Americans' democracy before our very eyes.
The speech comes as Trump is wrapped up in a legal battle with the U.S. Justice Department, requesting an independent third-party review of documents seized from his Florida home. Perhaps part of the reason why, as Democrats push to hold on to power, Biden chose slamming Trump instead of abortion as the strongest defense against Republicans.
The speech was sort of more focused on those other arguments as opposed to the abortion one, which to me is the Democrats' best argument in this election.
And there are new details regarding that Trump hearing. Friday afternoon, the judge overseeing it released a more detailed list of what was found at his home, including more than 40 empty folders marked classified, with no indication of where the information they contain went. All key developments at a critical time, with the Labor Day weekend kicking off the final race to the November midterms, which could be make or break for both sides. Farah?
Neetu Garcha in Washington. Thank you, Neetu. In just over a week, the federal Conservatives will have their new leader. The 5 candidates have all but wrapped up their campaigns, and now it's time for party members to make their choice. To set up the final week and beyond, we're joined by our chief political correspondent, David Aiken. David, what are we looking for?
Well, first of all, this race is setting records for participation. 678,000 eligible voters, Farah. 678,000. That is a record by a long shot. And as of yesterday, 395,000 had mailed in their ballot. Now, the deadline to get those ballots in, Tuesday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. It is a ranked ballot. The winner needs 50% plus one in any particular ballot. Pierre Poilievre, the Ontario MP, the former Harper cabinet minister, he is still the clear favorite, so much so he might win it on just one ballot.
David, speaking of Poilievre, he said this week that if he ever does become PM, he's going to introduce a new law requiring federal bureaucrats to speak in plain language. So what's behind that?
Right. Poilievre believes that bureaucrats who use too many technical or academic terms are a barrier to growth. He says difficult to understand laws and regulations adds costs to small businesses. So he vows to pass what he calls the Plain Language Act.
That employees use the simplest and fewest words possible to describe what they're saying in their government publications.
I mean, David, whoever wins, if it's him or someone else, they're going to have to get to work quickly because Parliament resumes in just over 2 weeks. So what's the top priority going to be for the new leader?
Well, I've been told by a few campaigns that the new leader will be less worried about Parliament and caucus, much more worried about some systems at party HQ, the fundraising arm of the party. Not as efficient as it should be, it needs some work. The database system that tracks supporters has been old and out of date for 2 elections at least. And by comparison, the Liberals are using very sophisticated voter tracking software. And I'll tell you what, it shows at election time. So the Conservatives right now, they're at a huge disadvantage in this critical area. Fixing it could take 12 to 18 months. It's going to cost the party several $1 million. But that is work the new leader must make a top priority in order to have the best shot at winning the next general election. Farah.
Sounds like it's going to be a heavy load for whoever takes over. David Aiken in Ottawa. Thank you, David. A powerful political figure's brush with death. Coming up, the failed assassination attempt caught on camera. In flood-stricken Pakistan, aid efforts are stepping up, but millions of people are still stranded, waiting for help to arrive. Today alone, Pakistan's armed forces rescued 2,000 people trapped by floodwaters, but the death toll surged. More than 1,200 people are now known to have died. Critical supplies are trickling in, but the country's biggest charity says roughly 90% of the 33 million people affected have not been reached. Waterborne diseases are spreading among those displaced by the disaster, and now there are fears of food shortages after almost half the country's crops washed away. Argentina's vice president is lucky to be alive today, following a failed assassination attempt that was caught on video. Footage shows the terrifying moment a gun emerged from a crowd of supporters outside the Buenos Aires home of Vice President Cristina Fernandez. The gunman then pulls the trigger inches from her face. Argentina's president confirmed the gun was loaded with 5 bullets, but it failed to fire. The gunman was quickly rushed by security personnel and members of the crowd who had gathered there to show support for Fernandez as she faces corruption charges. The 35-year-old was taken into custody, and police say his motive is still unclear. Myanmar's deposed former leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, has been sentenced to an additional 3 years in jail with hard labor. Suu Kyi is convicted of
into a safe configuration to proceed into tomorrow's launch attempt.
NASA says it's ready for round 2 as it prepares to try once more to launch a rocket toward the moon. The agency was forced to postpone the launch after a pair of technical issues earlier this week. If all goes to plan, the flight will blast off tomorrow, sending the Orion on a 6-week test flight around the moon and back. Fantasy fans are already finding their way back to Middle-earth after Amazon's new Lord of the Rings series debuted on its streaming service Thursday night. It's being called the most expensive show in TV history, with each episode costing, get this, nearly $60 million. As Mike Armstrong explains, it's a major offensive in the streaming wars that may have more to do with the company's retail business.
It would be impossible to accuse Amazon of not taking a big swing. Just buying the rights to The Lord of the Rings cost a reported $250 million US. It's already looking at 5 seasons, possibly a spin-off, and a price tag of about $1 billion.
It was extraordinary. I mean,
cost aside, the cast is promising a strong story.
You're going to laugh, you're going to cry, you're going to have all the feels, is what I would say.
Well said.
We thought our joys would be unending.
The new show, The Rings of Power, is a prequel to the Oscar-winning movies. It's set thousands of years prior. It's actually based on a series of appendices from Lord of the Rings, not a standalone Tolkien book. But it has fans, and that's why Amazon is shelling out so much money. It's trying to create a franchise to anchor Amazon Prime Video subscribers. Much in the same way competing streaming service Disney Plus takes advantage of its popular franchises.
If you're a Star Wars fan, if you're a Marvel fan, you can't go anywhere. You've got to have this service.
Now, attracting and holding on to subscribers is only part of the story. Most Amazon Prime Video subscribers get their memberships as a throw-in for signing up for Amazon Prime's delivery service. Streaming is about keeping those 200 million customers happy and spending.
Prime members spend a lot of money in Amazon's store.
Other streaming services also work to monetize subscribers in other ways. Netflix is moving into gaming. Disney's doing it with amusement parks. Over the summer, it's been letting subscribers in early and offering substantially discounted tickets.
So that means that the Disney Plus subscriber who's worth, let's say, $70 a year is now worth thousands of dollars a year to Disney.
Now, the biggest part of Amazon's business is retail. Well, its biggest retail competitor is getting into streaming. Walmart announced a deal earlier this month where people who sign up for its online delivery service will get Paramount Plus for free. Mike Armstrong, Global News.
Competitive swimming's governing body has approved the use of a specialized swim cap designed for Afro hair. The covering was banned from last year's Olympics in part because the International Swimming Federation reportedly said the caps did not fit the natural form of the head. Many swimmers criticized the comments, sparking a review which concluded that there was no advantage to be gained from using them. Soulcap, a company that sells the caps, called the decision a huge step forward toward improving inclusion in the sport. Today marks the 50th anniversary of an event that definitively changed Canada's biggest sport. The 1972 Summit Series was billed as a bitter battle on the ice. Team Canada facing off against the Soviet Union in an 8-game roller coaster that captured the fascination of millions. But for many, it was more than just hockey. Decades later, the game's legacy can still be felt. Eric Sorensen looks back at the iconic battle on and off the ice.
The 72 Summit Series is steeped in hockey lore. Canada and the Soviet Union, the seminal matchup of the two great hockey powers and the iconic players on both teams. In this country, it was an opportunity to affirm Canada's hockey supremacy against the backdrop of the Cold War.
Back then, we didn't know a lot about the Soviets. They were this scary image. It became more than just one hockey team trying to beat the other. It was proving that our system was better than their system.
For decades, Canada did reign supreme at the Olympics and in the amateur hockey world. But by the 1960s, the Soviet Union dominated. Their best could play, while Canadian professionals weren't allowed. So this series was our chance, finally, to prove our best were the best. Scoring in the opening seconds, Canada looked unstoppable.
I think we had a smugness with goals quickly by Esposito and that. It just seemed like, Canada was vindicated. We were the hockey capital of the world.
What happened next would change how the sport itself was viewed. The Soviets stormed back to take charge of the game and the series. In Vancouver, Canadian fans booed their heroes. Canada, of course, with grit and determination, proved their mettle when the series moved to Moscow.
They were playing for their country now, and a huge amount of pride as hockey players and as Canadians was on the line.
So I think that might be the greatest thing about the Canadian team is it showed resiliency and it showed the ability to come back from something where they looked to be a national disaster.
But what the summit revealed was that international hockey was indeed worthy competition.
it changed and there was more respect for the international players.
The North American game itself got better with the infusion of Russians and others.
Europeans were welcomed to the NHL. Eventually the Iron Curtain came down. And so the hockey world became a much bigger and open place as a result of that series.
September 1972 was a roller coaster of emotions for hockey fans. And without giving away the ending, the Summit Series did show that Canadian hockey at times can be the best in the world. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
What a triumph for our country. That's Global National for this Friday night. I'm Farah Nasser, and on behalf of our whole crew here, I want to thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us. Tonight's Your Canada is the sunset in Point O'Barrel, Ontario, courtesy of Global's own Colleen Christie, who, by the way, is going to be at the anchor desk tomorrow. We love seeing Your Canada, so please keep emailing us your photos at viewers@globalnational.com. Until Friday, take care of yourselves and each other. Have a wonderful and safe weekend. Good night.